believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Rants, also known as Ricky Rants, and this is a special episode. This is a Ricky Rants with Fans, which is a episode I do with my Patreon supporters. If you guys want to support the Ripple Effect Podcast, you can support me on Patreon, and if you support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you will be able to join us for these once a month podcasts I do with my Patreon supporters. So for $1 a month, you get to be on iTunes, BitChute, Odyssey, Spotify, all the platforms I'm on, and join us in one of these conversations. Of course, this is just one of the many ways you can support the show. Other methods of supporting the show are sending a one-time donation via PayPal. You can also send crypto. You can go to my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com, click on support, and find all the ways of supporting the show, including the crypto wallets. We have our merch store if you want to support us by purchasing hoodies, mugs, t-shirts, and any of that stuff. We also have a new sponsor I'm super excited about. So a past guest on my show, Rob Wolf, and somebody in the health and nutrition world that I've been a fan of for many, many years. Rob Wolf has a new product called Element, which is a electrolyte drink mix. You add it to your water. It gives flavor to your water, has no sugar, no cheap sweeteners, won't kick you out of ketosis, won't kick you out of fasting. And it can be helpful if you're dealing with trying to stay hydrated while busy, while fasting, while playing sports. And it can also help out with migraines and many other symptoms that are due to dehydration. So migraines, cramps, muscle fatigue, any of those things. So please go in the show description, click on the link for Element. And just by doing that, by purchasing Element, you are supporting the show. It's a great product. It's a great supplement. And I'm more than happy to have sponsors on the show of products I already used from people that I was already a fan of. Remember, this is a Value for Value show, but if you can't financially support the show, you can rate, review, tell people about the show, and that goes a long way. And from the bottom of my heart, everybody who has financially supported the show or support the show just by sharing, reviewing, and telling people about the show, I truly, truly appreciate it. But if you want to be on the next Patreon podcast, please consider signing up on Patreon. You can donate, like I said, as little as $1 a month for the opportunity to join us on the next Patreon podcast. That's it, guys. I'm going to let people into the show. I'm going to talk to some of the fans, some of the listeners. Let's see who shows up, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Peace. And we have Ronnie.
Here.
What's up, bud?
Hi, all good, man.
I
I'm
got,
your puppet now.
I got a podcaster and a soon-to-be podcaster.
Oh,
Yes.
Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Yes.
Joining the club?
Yes, after the birth of my next child, that is incoming in 7 days, hopefully.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Your second child. Do you know the gender?
It's my third because I have one with the ex. Yeah, and it's boys. So I have 3 boys, and I'm already regretting that decision. It's
Listen, I have a boy and a girl. It's nice to have one of each, but boy or girl is completely different than boys. I mean, this whole idea of this general neutral nonsense. I'm like, have you ever had one of each? Because girls take a little different type of approach to get them to calm down and listen. And I mean, my son isn't as, I don't want to say emotional, because he's a sensitive, he can be sensitive, but he he's more reasonable when he's mad. You know, I can calm him down much quicker. My daughter, when she, it's like you just leave her alone and just hope when the bomb goes off, like nobody dies. You know, it just it's incredibly different. She loses her, but she's either, I always say this, she's either the sweetest thing or the meanest thing, because then eventually she'll come to you and she'll apologize, and she knows she probably overreacted, but she will overreact again and again and again, no matter how bad she feels. So it's hopefully she'll have a little better control of her emotions eventually. I got her I I got her to start playing soccer again. She stopped playing soccer around the COVID time because what was going on was I had a medical exemption form for my kids not to wear masks at soccer, because I didn't want my kids to wear masks, but I also didn't want them to be completely disconnected from any type of social atmosphere, because we were homeschooling at the time because of masks in schools. So we're like, at least if they play soccer, they're going to be around some of their friends and kids they know. But so many kids kept asking my daughter, like, why aren't you wearing a mask? Why don't you have to wear a mask? But that it became a burden, and she got turned off by it, and she stopped playing. And since then, she never played anything again. And then the school, the dancing school she went to also shut down because of the lockdowns. And so she stopped doing dance, she stopped doing soccer. And I'm like, listen, you got to do something. I'm like, just to get your frustration out, just for exercise, just to, it'll be beneficial. And I'm like, I really enjoy watching, your kids succeed at something, or try something, get better at it. It's a fun experience for everybody to kind of go through as a family together. And so forever we've been kind of just like, aren't you tired of being a spectator? Because my son's always playing in multiple soccer teams and always doing stuff. So she just goes and watches him. And I'm like, don't you want to participate? So we just got her to start participating again, which was a huge accomplishment. And she's doing awesome because she's always playing with her brother anyways. But it's yeah, it was crazy. I didn't think that it would be this long for her to get back, into participating in something. But a lot of kids are dealing with some type of blowback from the 2020 lockdowns, if it's either social or linguistic or whatever it may be. I saw a video, and Ronnie might have seen this too, because I know you're pretty, you stay pretty clued in what's going on. But that Bill Gates video of him talking about how poorly schools are doing and how bad kids are doing since 2020. And
his kids is doing fine though.
Yeah, but that's right. And he ended the video. My kids are doing all right. Yeah, your kids in a freaking high-end private school are doing just fine, but all these other kids, and the worse the neighborhood, the worse the kids are doing. So it's like, this whole thing has just been just horrendous, because it's like the rich got richer, and the poor and poorly educated only got poor and even more poorly educated. So it's like, Jesus, it's if you're the elite and you're looking to dumb down society, you definitely are doing it correctly. So enough about me. Let's talk Ronnie. So you're starting, you got a name, right, for your podcast, so people can look out for it if they're listening to this in the future?
Yes, my name is, it's going to be Enlighten Me About. And hopefully I get you on the first podcast, and it's going to be about enlighten me about vaccines and so forth. The thing I'm going to go for is, we are not going to have like you can't come on my podcast and be like, I don't know. Then I'm going to burn your fucking ass. Be ready for that, Ricky.
I might say I don't know. I say I don't know all the time, because there's a lot of shit I don't know.
Yeah, I know. You can't know everything, but at least if I'm in your boat. My kids is not vaccinated. Oh, the first kid is, because I don't have anything to say about him, but the kid that lives with me, he's not vaccinated. So at least if you don't have the answers why you don't vaccinate, I'm going to burn your ass.
Well, vaccines have always been a topic that I've always really just been interested in health, nutrition. Like I feel like you uncover a lie, right, in your life, and then that leads to you start questioning other things. And little by little, you start uncovering more lies and more lies and more lies. And then you start getting to the point where like you just feel like everything's a lie, which is basically closer to the truth than the truth that they're trying to feed you. So it's yeah, I mean, it's I think diet and nutrition was one of the first things that I really because I think the thing about diet and nutrition that really stunned me was how everybody fell for the lie or everybody was falling for the lie, right? Like so when you look at like what we were told we should be eating, when we were told about like cholesterol and how dangerous cholesterol is to heart attacks, even though like the person people who die of heart attacks typically have average cholesterol numbers. So it's like all these things didn't make sense. I'm like, wow, man. And they got everybody fooled about this, and then you go start moving on to the next topic and next topic. So it just, and it was one of those topics that I felt like people really neglected. It wasn't, you had some of the people in the medical world that talked about it a little bit, and you'd find people like Gary Tobbs kind of uncovering about the sugar industry and how they got us to really not think about how harmful sugar was and the suppressed science. That Sugar Code is a great documentary that kind of documents that really well. And and then you get into vaccines and you're like, wait, there's like everybody says how vaccines are safe and effective, but like their studies seem kind of like bullshit. And there's all these parents that are talking about their kids being harmed by vaccines, and they can't all be crazy. And a lot of times they dismiss that they were actually harmed by vaccines, because it's funny. It's funny because I attempted to live stream this this I haven't live streamed in a long time since I got kicked off YouTube, but I have a Clips YouTube channel, and I'm like, oh, let me live stream to that, because I barely use the channel, and maybe it'll bring some traffic to it, and I'll see if I can live stream to my new channel. I'm just curious, and I was having issues with it, and then I'm like, screw it, I'll do it next time. But I attempted to do it because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to talk about anything too controversial today. And then next thing you know, we're going down the vaccine rabbit hole. So maybe it was a good idea that I didn't live stream. But yeah, so it's just one of those things where just like you didn't. A lot of people, I think, were kind of woken up to this idea that maybe vaccines aren't as safe as we've been told because of 2020. So I mean, in a way, they got what they wanted, because they obviously ruined a lot of lives and got a lot of people to get a probably unnecessary vaccine. But there's it's weird. I don't know which one outweighs the other one, if the pros outweigh the cons. It's unfortunate a lot of people got an unnecessary vaccine, but it's good that a lot of people are now being skeptical of vaccines themselves, because it seems like for some reason vaccines were the one thing that big pharma was responsible for, that everybody assumed like there's the safe thing, like they don't lie about how effective that thing is. And it's like it was so weird to me. I couldn't understand it, and I'd love to get your guys' opinion. But my theory, what I've been trying, because I've really been pondering on this, I'm like, what is it? Why can we talk about big pharma in regards to just about anything, and most people will be on board if you're talking about like how they push pills and the pill epidemic, and how they lie about how effective their drugs are, and all this stuff, or how safe their drugs are. And you talk about the percentage of drugs that get FDA approved and taken off the market. I mean, some huge percentage of pharmaceutical drugs get ripped off the market after getting FDA approved. So you could talk about that, and people would be like, yeah, oh yeah, they're crooked, they lie, it's all about money and all this stuff. And then you talk about vaccines, and people will be like, yeah, everybody knows they're safe and effective. And it's like, what? Wait, the same liars that lied to you about all these other products, for some reason you think are telling you the complete truth about this product? So to me, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, why can't people see that? And I came to the conclusion that I think it has something to do with the fact that we've been brainwashed at such a young age about this one specific topic. At such a young age, you start getting vaccines in America, at least in America, I think in most countries. And the parents, because it's from a pediatrician, not like a typical a doctor, you think pediatrician, like, it's yeah, like they care about kids and whatnot, and you start giving your kids vaccines, and so you start like kind of convincing parents and children at a young age that vaccines are not just harmless, they're completely 100% necessary, and that's why these viruses don't exist. And this and that, even though in the Anthony Fauci book by Robert Kennedy Jr., it's quite obvious that, and I've seen this graph before, even before I got his book, it's quite obvious that a lot of these things like polio, that vaccines get all the credit for basically removing from, it being a threat to the population, that those numbers were already going down. And then you see the numbers go down, which is probably herd immunity. And then they introduce the vaccine after the numbers go down, and then they give all the credit to the vaccines. And you would hear the story, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm pretty open to that. That seems like a pretty reasonable theory, that that's how they lied about polio and all these other things, in regards to giving the vaccine all the credit. And now we basically lived through it, so it makes it even easier for people to believe that that could have happened in the past, because COVID was never really a threat. The numbers magically start going down, and now they're not talking about hospitals being filled or anything like that, and everybody's giving the credit to the vaccine, even though we know, anybody who lived through it, that the vaccine like didn't change anything, that there was no more hospitals are normal, no more filled now than they were, but loved ones aren't dying anymore than they were before. Like, it was all just kind of a illusion. So you can kind of see how they've lied about this over and over again. I mean, have you guys thought about that? Like, why is it so hard to get people to believe that vaccines can be harmful?
Yeah, I've thought about
Sean.
it. I've thought about it, and what I've come up with is they use the same terminology over and over again. So in that one deal with the Purdue Pharma, that series, what was it called, Dope Sick?
Dope Sick was very good. I told a lot of people to watch it, because I'm like, listen, look at the parallels. If you watch, I'm actually kind of surprised that they didn't pump the brakes and come up with some excuse not to release it while we're still in the COVID pandemic, because you would assume that the people who released the film would know, like, okay, people are going to connect the dots and see the parallels there. The way that big pharma could manipulate the FDA, the way that big pharma could lie about their product, like in this situation, why couldn't they do it about, vaccines? So I was kind of surprised. But if people are listening who haven't watched, I cannot recommend that series enough. It's on Hulu. You can get the Hulu free trial for 7 days or whatever it is, and watch it for free, and then get rid of Hulu. But it's really worth watching.
Yeah, it is. And they the terminology they used was breakthrough pain. Well, they use the same breakthrough infection here, right? So there's one. So breakthrough there. Now, what's really interesting to me is that when they started talking about coming up with different terms for conditions that the vaccine's causing, like sudden death syndrome, right? Winter vagina. They're all I mean, you can't make this stuff up. All this stuff are terminology.
Real?
Yes, these are real terminology that came on the backside of it to explain some of the conditions, right? Well, when kids started getting their vaccines, what was one of the things that you would always hear about? SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Now, do you think that possibly that was another condition that was brought up because of the vaccines were killing kids after they took them?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Sean, because it's funny. This is something I've thought about so many times, and for some reason it just never has come up while doing a podcast. So I'm not sure I've ever mentioned it on a podcast, but I've connected the same dots where I'm like, because I remember, so most of us are very curious and skeptical people, right? So when I first became a parent, and you would hear the term SIDS, right? And like they would just dismiss it as sudden, infant death. And I'm like, okay, what causes it? And they're like, oh, we don't know. I'm like, so it's a general term that you just use when an infant dies, and literally it could be a billion different causes, and it's all generalized in this one term. Like, it sounded like they're covering something up. And I'm just like, this seems unusual. And then I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, wouldn't that be a great way of hiding some vaccine related deaths? You just call it SIDS, and people are like, yeah, it was SIDS, and then people don't think about it. I'm like, well, what the fuck SIDS? Like, okay, you're saying it was SIDS, but like, what actually happened? Like, was it neurological? Was it a heart attack? Was it a like what actually physically, scientifically can we quantify happened? Like, can we like there has to be some type of explanation. What's crazy is that if it was a adult, we wouldn't just call it like, you know, sudden adult death and just be like, well, it's sudden adult death. Like we wouldn't just dismiss it and be like, oh yeah, well, let's not investigate it. It's just sudden adult death. Families would be like, no, we're gonna do a fucking autopsy and we're gonna figure out how the fuck this person died. But if when it's a infant, when it's a baby, we're completely okay with that. It's insane. Sorry, I just had to go on a rant because I'm so glad you brought that up.
You're right. And what a better way to hide a vaccine injury or the backside of what happens. And we see from everything that's coming out now. I mean, at least if you're searching for it, I mean, you're not going to see it if you're watching the regular news. They haven't covered any of it because everything's brought to you by Pfizer. And so it's yeah, man, we're in some strange times.
So I got you off track. So but so do you,
Can I
you were getting-
interject here?
wait, hold on one second because I feel bad because
Do tell.
I cut off Sean and I think you were getting to why you think vaccines specifically people have a hard time accepting as dangerous compared to other things. Is that so? How is that all related?
The media does it. So I mean, just think about what they were covering when you heard about SIDS, right? Just a bunch of media would be playing the same way that they do everything else. And so the media really controls everything, just like Charlie Robinson, the octopus of global control. That's one of the legs of it. And that's how they're able to do what they're able to do. When I say they, whoever's in control of running this monopoly that they've got going on everything. It's fascinating, actually.
Did you ever question vaccines prior to podcasting, or when was your red pill, or what was your red pill? Like, what was the thing that made you start questioning it?
The vaccines I just didn't like them after I got a flu shot one season and it got me really sick. And I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to take none of that again. And so I've just I don't see any reason to put alive anything in my body if I don't need it, and then when they started doing the whole natural immunity is not real, that's when I knew something was wrong. I mean, there was no question at that point. Like, okay, I mean, I was old enough to know about chickenpox parties and all this stuff. I mean, so you guys are doing some funny stuff now.
Ronnie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I'm trying to look for the link. Oh, internet is dead. But I sure read about some diseases coming up in Ukraine now when they have war. So I said this to my girlfriend, like, how come this is a almost Western country? Most of the people is most likely vaccinated. But when the war starts, you don't get fresh water, you don't get fresh food, and suddenly every disease is there. So I'm like, they are most likely vaccinated. How come exactly when the point when the society breaks down, the vaccine doesn't do shit? They are there to help you when the society breaks down and you can't handle yourself. But when I'm looking at Ukraine, it's looking like, okay, the society breaks down and the disease is everywhere, and the vaccines doesn't do shit. That's my question. How is that possible? Are they working or not? That's my question.
Well, the other question is North Korea hasn't got anybody's vaccines from anywhere. And what, like, if COVID was, because they never got vaccines, like nobody does business with them. So, I'd like to know, like, why aren't we reporting on all the deaths and casualties and the overfilled hospitals there? It's like we're not even discussing it at all, which is hilarious. And there's other countries too. I know there's been a couple suspicious like accidents or assassinations or whatever of politicians who didn't want to do business with the whole vaccine COVID agenda. So but again, this stuff isn't. And listen, we don't even have to go overseas. Look at Florida. DeSantis said, hey, we shut down for a little bit. All the experts are saying we're going to get this onslaught of hospitals filling and people dying. And he waited a little bit and he's like, okay, it's not happening. Then he waited another week and he's like, okay, it's not happening. Then eventually he's like, fuck it. I'm going to open up the state. And once we start seeing evidence of this stuff actually happening, then I'll address it then, which is exactly how every state should have done it. It boggles my mind, the illusion that everybody kind of felt for. And I still see people wear masks even though they're not required to. And to me, it's just a sign of trauma. Like I've said over and over again, it's a sign that I think it was Del Bigtree recently who, I think it was the High Wire. They were interviewing people who were still wearing masks in public and asking them like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you still wearing a mask? And they're like, oh, I just feel comfortable. I just feel this. I just feel, it's like, they're afraid that you spend 2 years just scaring the crap out of somebody that now, even though there's no real threat, they're still petrified. It's just it's wild. Greg.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Greg. Where you calling in from?
Ontario, Canada, just outside Toronto.
Nice. I got a Canadian coming on the show tomorrow. Michael Millerman.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Probably bring you Tim Hortons. And he'll say, hey, I'm sorry a lot. That's what we do. I'm play hockey.
Yeah. Well, the Canadians are all very nice. I think Adam Scorgie I think James Corbett, Adam Scorgie. I'm trying to think what other
Jessica Rose.
Who's that?
Jessica's.
Oh, that's right.
Jessica's free.
How do I forget Jessica Rose? Yeah, she's probably one of my favorite Canadians. People either love her laugh or hate her laugh. Like some people are like, dude, I can't get through the show because of her laugh, and then I'm like, that's funny because I get all these compliments. People like will tune in just to hear her laugh. She's one of those friends that when you hang out with, you always feel super funny because they just laugh at everything you say. My son's like that. He laughs at everything I say, so I feel like I'm funny even though I'm not. And but she's like that where she's like super easy to make laugh, but she's awesome. Yeah, it's funny how I hooked up with her, and then little by little, like I thought sometimes you have a really interesting and fun conversation with somebody, but you don't know if other people are gonna find it interesting, or if there's a chemistry there. You wonder like, is it in my head, or was it really like a good conversation? And then when I started getting all that positive feedback, I'm like, okay, I think there's something here, but it's not. I don't think it's me. I think it's her. I think whatever show she's on, she has this unique ability to keep it casual enough where it's fun, and she's never too serious, which is kind of fun. She'll mess around with the camera, and then she'll talk about her cat, and then and then she's giggling, so it's really fun. So
well, she's from Newfoundland, and if you people from Newfoundland, they're all like that. They're just happy-go-lucky people.
Really?
Most important issue when you talk Canadian is Finland is going to beat you in hockey.
Hey, she's from Newfoundland, which means it's better than your Finland. Okay, Ronnie?
There's no better than my Finland.
It is funny how they do that. It's like New Mexico, like trying to, and then they get mad that the Mexicans go there. I'm like, you called it the New Mexico. I'm like, of course you're going to go there.
You know who's in your area, Ronnie, is Dr. Ariana Love. She lives in
So
Finland.
tell me.
Yeah, she's a good one for you to have on your podcast too. She'll give you that information. She talks all about it.
Who is she? Was she on your show, Sean?
Yeah, we didn't talk about the shot or any of that stuff. I stayed away from that. But I mean, she's well into it, the snake venom theory and all that.
Oh, is that what she focuses on? Is that
No, but she touches on a lot of different stuff. So she's a naturopathic medical doctor or whatever, however that works.
functional?
I had her explain it to me, like what does that mean in the Western medical world? Because that's what they say quackery is. So I had her explain it to me.
Yeah, but the whole history of it, that wasn't accidental, right? Like calling anything that's naturopathic quackery, that was on purpose. And
yeah.
which
That's Rockefeller.
exactly, yeah. You could watch Corbett. Well, Corbett hits it on quite a few different documentaries that he's done, little videos. But there was a documentary that used to be on Netflix. I had the filmmakers on, and then I believe it got ripped off Netflix right around the time I had them on, either right after or right before. I can't remember now. But it was called The Big Secret and went through the whole history of how we looked at minerals and vitamins and root extracts and teas as medicine. And then eventually we got to a point where Rockefeller got involved with the AMA and made we're getting busier. What's up, Scott?
Hey, what's going on, Ricky? How you doing, brother?
Good.
Nice. Yeah, I figured I'd just pop in and say, hey,
Yeah, why
what's going on in here? Oh, Sean, what's up, man? I'm just seeing who's all here.
Hey Scott,
What's
I
up,
sent
brother?
you an email. We
Oh,
are going to
Ronnie.
we are going to need to discuss my alcohol abuse.
Oh, are we now? Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
all right,
we
all
are.
right. What email did you send? What email did you send it to?
Your Proton mail, whatever, Scott Horton Armstrong Proton, whatever. I went to your website.
Okay.
Whatever you're
Okay.
using.
The rebunked one or the Truthzilla one?
Rebunked.
Okay, good. Just making sure. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Right on, brother. All right, cool. Nice.
Well, Ronnie's he's finally starting a podcast. He's taking the leap. He's going down that rabbit hole. So he's
Beautiful.
yeah, why not? I mean, the more the merrier. That's the way I look at it. I've told the story a bunch of times. When Charlie said he was going to start a podcast, he kind of joked around and said, he's like, oh, like the world needs another podcast. I'm like, dude, the more truth tellers or truth seekers, the better, so the more the merrier, so
Awesome.
plus he has a perfect personality for it. He's well researched, and he's also really good at not being that serious. So it's a good mix.
That's perfect.
Yeah, and maybe we'll
Awesome,
even see
man.
him
Right on.
hammered a few times while doing a podcast. I love a good hammered host from time to time.
yeah. I know a few good ones too. Yeah. I just put my email in the chat there just in case, and then anybody else they want. So
Awesome.
yeah, this is the elite crew here. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I don't know, Matt. We haven't seen Matt's face or heard him, so I'm not sure which Matt that is. If it's one of the Matts that's
Okay.
on before.
It's the spice
Alright.
guy. I'm cruising up from Cape Cod. I have about an hour left to my drive, so I didn't want to put the video on to take up any bandwidth. So good to see everybody.
Great.
What's up, Matt?
What's up, Matt? How was the? Well, what we saw, I think we saw each other on the last Patreon podcast, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was there.
Was that before or after you went to the Villa Rose?
That was before.
Ricky, that
No.
was the podcast when you had the intervention with me and Matt, and you talked about me getting into keto.
Oh, yes. That's right. Yeah. Well, Matt, he happened to be in town, literally, like locally, and then he was looking for somewhere to eat. My wife was she works and helps manages this local restaurant, Villa Rose, which is a nice little kind of it's not a full Portuguese restaurant, but there's Portuguese dishes with a mixture of other stuff. And I told Matt, I'm like, go over there. I'm like, I'll make sure my wife takes care of you and sets you up or whatnot. So you end up swinging by, which was awesome. My wife texted text messaged me, and she's like, "Your buddy Matt's a sweetheart," and I'm like, "Yeah," I'm like, "He's very nice." So, and then it was nice to get feedback and hear that you got you had a good experience and the food was good and all that stuff.
It was the best cioppino that I've ever had.
I don't even know what cioppino really is. Well, what is cioppino?
Basically a seafood stew. It had shrimp in there. They threw a little bit of the linguiça in there too, which was delicious. And there was no lobster on hand. There was a shortage of lobster, so they bulked me up with some scallops and some other fish, and it was unbelievable.
Well, Portuguese people we're known for our seafood. It's weird because where I'm from up north, it's a little less seafood, so we eat a little bit more meat. But we have some really good seafood dishes, and they really take pride in their seafood dishes. So the owner of the restaurant, I don't know if he was there the day you were there, Tony, but Tony Tavares, but he's he's Portuguese and right off the boat, and really does some amazing work, and it's a cool atmosphere. I don't like his dining room. That's why everybody's always fighting for the pub area and the patio. He has one of those boring dining rooms that it's just like, okay, I'd rather be in the pub area where it's like it's a little more lively, so. But it's the food's awesome, and since he had the patio, he's been killing it in the summer. Because the thing, when you live in New England, as you know, Matt, like, we don't have a lot of too many months of nice weather. So when you do have some nice weather, you want to eat outside, you want to spend and enjoy as much time in the sun as you can. So anybody who has outdoor seating, basically you flock to it, and if you get a chance to eat outside. And probably the only good thing that came out of 2020 was the fact that a lot of restaurants now have outdoor seating. So that's about the only good thing that came out of 2020. But yeah, so that's awesome. Yeah, next time you're in town, give me a little bit of a heads up. I'll try to rearrange my schedule so we can get together, and I'll meet you there.
It was super last minute for me coming down there for work, and it was just kind of something that got thrown on the schedule. And if I didn't do it, I wasn't going to get back down there. But after that dinner, and I ate, I headed across the border into Connecticut to I think it's Connecticut Valley Cigar Company or something like that in Enfield, where I was staying. And they had a nice outdoor patio area. People were out there. It was a great area, good time, excellent experience in Western Mass, Northern Connecticut.
Well, those Connecticut wraps on cigars, as you know, comes from Connecticut, right? So
the biggest export.
Yeah,
actually, for the United States. We export the wrapper to the Dominican and Nicaragua, or wherever wherever the factories are that are rolling the cigars, and then they sell them back to us. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty funny because it's like I'll buy a Connecticut wrapped cigar that comes from whatever Honduras, and it's like the tobacco started right like 20 minutes away from where I live, and then went to Honduras and back to my house. So it's funny how that works. Well, for people listening who don't know what the hell we're talking about, so Connecticut has a very good. So when you have a cigar, you have the wrapper, the filler, and what am I forgetting? The
binder.
The binder. So you have the filler is the tobacco that is inside the cigar. The binder basically keeps everything together, and then you have a wrapper, which is a really pretty outside leaf that kind of gives it a really nice look and makes the cigar look nice. Well, Connecticut has one of the best wrapper leaves in the world, and so cigar families or tobacco families from all over the world will get those Connecticut tobacco leaves and get use it for the wrapper, and so that's what we're talking about. And you get cigars from anywhere, and you can find a Connecticut wrapped cigar. I know some people have said that it's not a great or tobacco for a filler, but it's a good wrapper. Either way, it's really cool to have all these tobacco places locally. And if anybody hasn't seen the art of wrapping a cigar, it's pretty phenomenal. I mean, it's to see just how precise you have to be, to roll a cigar, and you buy a box of hand rolled cigars, whatever, 100 hand rolled cigars, the fact that they're all the same gauge, and it's pretty cool, to know that it's all handmade and it's one of those art forms. There's some appreciation to something that's kind of built by hand. It's like buying a car that's built by hand or whatever. There's something, a connection to it. So Yeah, so tons of awesome things. Ronnie's starting a podcast. Scott is at the T Lab podcast studios. Dude, that is awesome that you and Ryan have hooked up and doing work together. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't even know, man. I don't even know. It was just this total synchronicity, and it just sends. I was planning on coming out to Tennessee anyway, but I was going to go to a different part of Tennessee, and I just had him on my show, and we were kind of staying in touch. And like I talked to him now, and he said he was like literally at dinner, or he was having lunch with his mom, and he said like he just had got this bug in him, and he just like was just like, you know what, I'm gonna just let him say, hey, why don't you come here and use the studio? And then like you were saying, literally just on a whim, sitting there with his mom, just texted me, and then that's when I got the text message, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm coming to Nashville then. Like, this, what the heck, crazy. So, yeah, man, it's a trip. Super grateful. Yeah, I'm sitting in my backyard of my new place here, in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, pretty much.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so
it's crazy.
So you record, so all your podcasts are recorded at his place?
So Ryan has a studio, like an actual, like, it's legit. It's like. He's got quite the operation, I have to tell you. And yeah, so there's 2 recording studios in there. He has one, and he had the second one that he built that's just, he said, was just kind of not being used at all. So that's the main reason why. He said he wanted to bring me in and then eventually maybe bring some other people in. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not supposed to put that out there, but I'm just saying, yeah, he offered me this opportunity, and it's just pretty cool. So it's it's quite a blessing, and then like, he's been really cool. Like, I co-hosted one of his daily wrap-ups last week, and I'm just like, this is, what dimension am I living in, dude? It's so crazy. Of course, my microphone didn't work, and so my mic was coming in through his mic, and we didn't want to stop and fix it. So, yeah. But anyway, whatever. It's just a trip, man. I just don't even know. Yeah, well, just dude, overwhelming with gratitude.
Until the wheels fall off, man.
Well, I told you.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it when we did the Swapcast, when you started your podcast. I talked about how you have this very go-getter type of attitude where like you don't sit around and wait for things to happen. You go out there and you take risks and you take chances and you put in the work and you put in the effort, and hard work will cross the path with some luck. And that's why I always tell people, I'm like, listen, to succeed in anything, does it take some luck? Yes. But if you work hard, that road's going to cross the path with luck much quicker, than if you sit back and do nothing. And you look at everybody who succeeds, it's like, that's really the one ingredient that is a necessity is don't give up. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And you never know where it's going to take you.
Totally. Well, just on that note, like, I got something else I want to share with you guys. And this is just like a really crazy, like, just I've had like this crazy epiphany over the last like 24 hours. And just kind of along those lines, like, so coming out here, right? Like, I don't really know a whole lot of people. And this thing with Ryan, like, it's not a paying gig, you know what I mean? He's just letting me use the studio. So so I'm still like, I'm going to need to get a job and all that stuff. And so I'm looking around and I was applying at a whole bunch of jobs, and it's kind of surprising. Like, Nashville, it's like super, like, I was picturing like down south, kind of like, it's kind of laid back. Things are going to be like way cheaper. Oh, no. Things are like, this is like Los Angeles, man. Like, this is like, everything is super expensive out here. Like, it's you can barely find a place, just a room anywhere for less than like $1,000, like easily, like $1,200 easy. It's like, it's crazy expensive out here, but it's cool. I'm not complaining about that. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to need to figure out a job thing here real quick. I actually got hired as a ghost tour guide. So I interviewed. And so like, I got this job doing like ghost tours in downtown Nashville. And I'm like, that's cool. But then I talked to Dean Reiner. Dean Reiner, he does a show called the Up is Down podcast. And I had him on Monday, and we were talking, and he kind of like did this thing where he was living in Portland, and he needed to get out of the city. So him and his girlfriend got some land, got a property like way out in the country. And he said he's just been kind of like doing odd jobs around, making ends meet, doing that. But it's like his story, like I hear him talk about it on his podcast, like how that networking has led to all kinds of other projects and just like doing odd jobs. And he works at like the volunteer fire department, and it's like he's just being his own boss. He's not working for, he's not on a payroll anywhere. He's just doing jobs, and just that one job turns into another job, which turns into another job. And I was just asking him, like, well, how do you do that, man? Like, how did you like get the ball going on that? He's like, man, you just got to like kind of just have the mentality that like, make your life your career. That's what really stood out to me. Like, make your life your career, And he's like, all I did is I just went on Facebook and I made a post saying, hey, I'm a healthy, able-bodied person. I can help with odd jobs. If you need help around your farm, your property, if you need something picked up at the store, if you need help moving, if you need a hole dug, anything like that, you know, hit me up. I can help out with that. And he said that kind of led to things. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's a good idea. So I made a post like that yesterday. And holy crap, man, I think I've just like unlocked the secret of the universe, man. Like I literally have gotten like hundreds of responses. I can pick and choose whatever job I want, whenever I want. Like, and it's like people like some lady needs help disassembling a swing set, and some lady needs help putting together a kitchen table set. I'm going tonight to pick up a kitchen table and delivering it to somebody. Tomorrow I'm pressure washing a tour bus. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, like, and it's all like good money. Like I'm saying like 25, 30 bucks an hour. It's like, holy crap. And so I'm just going to do this, man. I'm just going to like be my own boss and just do gig stuff for like here on out. Dude, it's crazy. I might even like turn this into like a business. Like I even got a whole business plan, get like an LLC, just like tasks around town. You know what I mean? Like Nashville tasks or something like that. I don't know, dude, it's crazy. So my mind is blown right now.
If you watch Andrew Camarati's YouTube channel, that's exactly how he started. Just odd job,
really
knocking on people's doors saying, hey, you got a tree, I got a chainsaw, I'll cut it down for you.
Yeah.
And his YouTube channel is what, 1 million subscribers, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, he's huge now.
Wow.
Just knocking on doors, just exactly that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. You know, it's just like I've got all kinds of people flooding in, and I kind of put like it out there, like, you know, my ultimate goal is get outside the city, get some land, do like, you know, kind of the decentralized homesteading type deal. And so many people kind of in that ilk kind of resonated with what I was saying. And then so I said, not only am I trying to like, you know, sustain myself this way, but I'm also trying to network with people kind of in that realm in this community. And I've had lots of people like with homesteads and with farms kind of reach out, and it's just like, dude, it's just blowing my mind right now, kind of what's going on. So it's pretty cool stuff, man. Yeah. So if you ever find your place, you want something new or something, man, just put an ad on Facebook and say, hey, yeah, I'm here to help. And then just like, and you know, that's what really resonated with me. It's just like, now I can just make my life, my career, and just pick what I want to do and figure it out from there. It's crazy. It's a little scary, but it's all right. It's cool.
I like
Hey,
that.
Scott,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Scott, that podcast you did with Dean was mind blowing. From
cool.
the whole,
I'm glad
let's
you liked
not
it,
call
man.
it homestead. Dude, I don't call it homesteading anymore.
I know. I don't call. I'm trying
right
not to
now-
call it homesteading anymore. I'm trying not
Right
to.
now, decentralized living. That was the best thing I've ever heard, because it's not.
I know.
It's not homesteading. And
Yeah.
and you know, I'm trying to do that myself, where I'm trying to, you know, build a garden and become more self-sufficient for myself, my wife, my kids. And that podcast was just absolutely amazing, man. Make your life your career is just words to live by. Words to live
that's
by,
what I'm
man.
saying.
I wish you all the best and all the luck with
Thanks, man.
this whole move to Tennessee, man. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's great that you just packed it up and hit the road, man. Awesome. So so inspirational.
Thanks, dude. Like, yeah, thanks, man. That's crazy. I'm lucky to be in a position to do this. You know, no kids, no nothing. So, and all my attachments in Oregon kind of fell away. So here we are. So yeah, but anyway, that's pretty much it, man.
Wish I could do
Sean, what's up with you, brother?
Oh man, just living the dream. Work's kind of slowed down over here with the company I was at, so I've been out of work for a couple of weeks, but I should be back tomorrow or the next day somewhere. But I mean, it's just the great job kills the dream, man. Honestly, because it just doesn't allow for the time that you need to be able to do what you need to do in that amount of time, to create content. And I mean, it's tough. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but maybe one of these days I'll do the leap like you, man, and just do it. I'm doing growing the food though. I'm doing that. I started doing that, and I think everybody needs to start doing that.
Good. Yeah, totally. That's one area I've definitely I had to leave all my emergency food behind. I'm starting from scratch, man. I'm like, oh geez, pressure's on now. But yeah, it's cool, man. Like Ryan and I got invited to this I don't know, it's like decentralized living, like this farm. I almost called it homesteading, like a homesteading farm. No, it's like these people's farm, and they're just giving a farm tour, just like a cool little community. And I guess there's gonna be a jam session here, and yeah, man, Ryan's a cool cat, like outside the podcast too. We've been hanging out, dude. It's pretty cool.
Well, the cool thing is you
Yeah.
guys connect in a lot of different levels because you're both
Yeah.
musicians too, right?
Yeah, yep. That's one. Oh, that's another thing too. Is I've already put the word out. I'm trying to put the word out. We're looking for a drummer in Nashville, and we're gonna put together like a truther super group here, dude. I'm telling you.
That's yeah.
Yeah. We need like a red-pilled drummer in the Nashville area with a place to practice. And
Or
Ryan and myself and him, we're gonna put together a freaking band, dude. I'm telling you.
that's or just get a drummer that is just naive, and then he'll be red pilled once he starts paying attention to his own lyrics, his own music.
Yeah, maybe. I just had the experience though of being in a band with people that are not awake and actually are fully indoctrinated, and it was not the best experience. We made amazing music, but it was not. It could have been better, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
And it ultimately didn't last. So
the problem with musicians is that we all have, I say musicians, but really any artist, like they have a vision and they have, they're very passionate about their work because typically it's very personal, right? So it's like you're very attached to it. You're very possessive over it, and when somebody wants you to change it or goes against, or has a different vision from yours, it's really hard to kind of find that happy medium. When I played music my brother and I we played in years in a band together. Luckily, the two other band members kept us from killing each other. I probably left that band about 100 times. There's every other practice I'd be like, I fucking quit. It's like, I can't do this anymore. You guys, it was just too stressful because I would, from my perspective, of course, and I'm sure, they would have a different perspective, but from my perspective, it's like I would spend all this time writing and putting together riffs and guitar riffs and lyrics and really try to, spend a lot of time writing. The lyrics to me was very time consuming because I always had this idea that the problem with one of the problem with music is that sometimes you can have a really good melody and a really good beat and a really good riff, but the lyrics suck. And then you like the song, and then when you start paying attention to the lyrics, you're like, let me read these lyrics. I'm like, what is he saying? And then you read them and you're like, these lyrics fucking suck. And I'm like, but yet the song's really good because the melody's good and everything else is good, right? So it's a well put together, but the lyrics weren't good. And then you look at like spoken word, for example, and you get somebody who's really, really good at spoken word, somebody who does, what do they call it? The poetry, when you do the spoken word poetry. And it's like without any melody, without any help from like guitars or keyboards or sound effects or anything, it can move you. Just the words themselves can move you. And I'm like, okay, well, how about we take words that can move you with music that can move you and try to combine the two instead of being like, okay, because I can come up with a catchy melody or because you see it all the time with musicians, especially singers who write their own lyrics. Like you have these talented musicians who come up with the music, and then the vocalist will add the vocals later, and they'll be like, okay, I'll write something to this music, and they'll just come up with this catchy melody and spend zero time really making sure that every word matters in those lyrics and that the lyrics themselves are meaningful and well thought out, because they understand that most people, it's funny because I talked about this specific thing with Eddie Bravo when he was on my show years ago, before he found out that the earth was flat. We talked about this, how like most people think they like a song because of the lyrics, and the truth is you actually like the song because of the melody, because of the beat, and the lyrics are completely almost pointless at times. If you have the exact same melody and change the lyrics, you would like it equally as much, and so to me, like it's weird how that works out. And that's why like there's even some rappers that I like Low Key, or I'm having a brain fart now, but there's quite a few rappers that I like, because if you're a good rapper, if you're a good lyricist, like literally like the words are everything. Like the beat, even sometimes the beat doesn't even matter. The beat could suck, but if the lyrics are on point and they're hard hitting, and you could tell that every word is well thought out and creative, the way that they blend things in or the way that they rhyme certain words, and still tell a story, like it'll blow you away, you know. And I think it was Low Key who had a song called Alphabet Killer. I think that's what it is. And he literally starts with every word from the alphabet, and he does like, I don't know, like 4 or 8 bars or something like that, which each letter of the alphabet, he goes through A all the way to Z, and he'll do a full sentence that makes sense with all words that start with A. Then he'll do a full sentence with B, and he goes all the way down to Z. It's like fucking crazy. And it's just like the amount of effort and time, and probably going through a Webster dictionary it would take to kind of put that all together is absolutely insane. So it's just like, you know, it's fascinating because it's like rap is appreciated for something that really should also be appreciated in a lot of rock and metal music, but in many cases is neglected because it's like I said, you can have a catchy song without, you know, really. Would you agree with what I'm saying, Scott, as a musician?
Oh man, yeah, that's fantastic. I got to look that song up now. I'm like sitting here trying to like string 3 words together that have like A that all start with A, and I'm trying to string. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah, I just got to check that out. I love that comparison that you made between the idea that hip hop, yeah, it's absolutely like it's the story, and like the words themselves are the instrument. You know, like so many of like people, yeah, like it's, I don't know, even like the M&Ms or the Busta Rhymes are able to use like the alliteration and the actual like tonal like the words themselves are part of the music itself. Yeah, totally. You know what I mean? Like how it's not just the rhyme, it's like the delivery and everything. Like, oh yeah, totally. And then the words have so much meaning. You kind of tend to really stick, you know, the hip hop songs really tend to stick out vocally, verbally, and the songs or the beats too. Yeah, but like I'm thinking of like certain, you know, classic rock songs. Like I don't even know. Like when I'm singing them, I'm just like, yeah, like I just kind of like know like the general words. And you know, that's always the classic thing where we just make up the words in our heads, and then when you actually find out what the like revved up like a douche in the middle of the night, something like that. Like we just make up the words as we go. Just, you know what I mean? Like it's so funny. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean with that. You know, it's funny too. Like that reminded me too. Like this is a funny personal story. It's like, okay, so I don't know if I've ever told you guys this or told anybody this, but like in middle school and high school, like back in the 90s, like I was like straight up like gangster rap dude. Like I was straight, like I would wear like FUBU. I wore like FUBU outfits, like wore a class, like straight up, dude. I was straight up like Master P, Cash Money Millionaires, like Nas, like the whole thing, dude. Like to the like Biggie, the whole thing, man. Like it was so crazy. And that was my thing, you know what I mean? It was so funny. I was playing guitar. I started playing guitar when I was 16, so I was learning like Led Zeppelin and like classic rock songs. But and I totally just engulfed in like 90s rap. Like that was me. Like that was just my image. I was like the little gangster kid. It's kind of embarrassing looking back and seeing some of the pictures. I was like, I was like 250, almost 300 pounds. So like this fat little gangster kid, dude. It was crazy. Like I don't even know who that person was. But at the same time, you know, I literally like missed out on all the rock that was going on in the 90s. And it wasn't until like literally about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, that I'd maybe like heard of Nirvana, like I've heard of like Alice in Chains, but I never actually listened to their music before. And like I've had like this massive awakening. And I'm just like, so the last like 5 or 6 years, I've just been immersed in like 90s rock. So I'm just like, God, I can't believe I missed out on all these guys, like Soundgarden, like Rage Against the Machine became my favorite there for a while, up until all this. But it's like, you know, like I just was like, so I've kind of re-fallen in love with 90s rock. And like right now, I just cannot stop listening to Oasis. Like I know they kind of got a little crazy, but like their songs, like you're talking about melody, talking about just, you know, writing like lyrically and how the songs are, I'm paying attention to like how the songs are constructed and how like they do this interesting thing where you have like a chord progression for the, like some of their main songs I've noticed, they have like a chord progression for the verse, and then they have like a bridge, and then they use the same chord progression for the chorus, which is an interesting thing. You don't really hear that very often. And it's just like, I don't know. So I missed out on all that stuff. And so I'm now just catching up on all my 90s rock. And I'm just like, I can't stop listening to Oasis right now. So there you go.
Hey guys, can
Yeah.
I derail everything you guys just said?
You got it, Ronnie. What's up?
Yeah, because because I just watched the documentary about Eddie Bravo's friend. He had made a flat earth documentary. I watched that.
Next Level, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
I like Hibbler, but
yeah, let me tell me.
He's a little.
The problem I have with the whole documentary is he said one thing that's not going through my head, because he said that the stars doesn't change. We see the same stars all the time. And if you are a history buff, I'm like not the biggest one, but I like Graham. And Graham says that the stars change because he's going into the pyramids and stuff, and the pyramids are built like they have small, like, whatever shafts that going out, and they're looking at stars, and they have changed a bit in hundreds of years. So I'm like, when they said absolutely, the in the documentary there was like, the stars never change position, and Graham is like, yeah, they do, and he's counting, because my girlfriend, I bought the books for her because she reads, I don't. But the stars are changing, like they're moving. Doesn't mean the earth is flat or not, but the stars are moving. They are moving between a few thousand years. They are moving, right? So I'm like, that was,
Did you listen
eh.
to Hibbler on Tinfoil Hat podcast with Alex Jones?
It's epic.
Oh my God. I never laughed so hard in my life. That show was, first of all, Alex is hysterical. Like, people who don't get his humor, it just like, I'm like, yeah, he's over the top. It's because he's trying to be over the top. He's hilarious. But like, his obsession with Hibbler's name was just the funniest thing ever. And then it's just,
Yeah, that was good.
that it was so funny. And the thing about Hibbler, I like him, but is it just me, or does he come off like a little too confident sometimes? Where to me, it's a turn off. Like, anybody who's that sure of something you can't possibly be 100% sure of, it kind of turns me off a little bit. It's he like, he kept telling Alex, is like, oh, I got the truth, and like my movie's gonna, just, I don't know, it's this crazy, Picasso piece of work, and I'm like, okay, I get it, but I'm like, a lot of the flat earth arguments have been made already. It's like, what could possibly be in your documentary? So it's just, from your perspective, Ronnie, was there anything new in the documentary, or was it just more of the
No, not much. And if you go back to what Graham says, he says the shafts in the pyramids are, they have the, I don't know how much. I'm guessing you guys are very familiar what Graham is saying. So the shafts, they have like what the fucking masons. They are one to the right and one to the left, and the shafts are going up to the stars, and they have moved a bit. And that's if you're going to say the earth is flat, that doesn't chime with me, because everything Graham is doing is he's saying the earth is this old because the stars have moved.
You're talking about Graham Hancock?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about how both their theories collide, and one kind of debunks the other a little bit.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't chime with me.
My one of my problems with the flat earth movement, it's the same thing with like the Bitcoin movement, is that people have become so obsessed with this one dogma that it, like, literally nothing else matters. And it's like, okay, it's maybe just like, shouldn't we look at everything as like just one more piece to the puzzle of like trying to understand the world, or make the world a better place, or whatever, discover things. To me, it's like anytime I'm talking to somebody and it seems like they're trapped in this dogma, they're going to have blinders in regards to their open-mindedness and thinking and all that stuff. And, I've said, we brought up Jessica Rose, earlier. She's a perfect example. Like, the reason why I think she's so fascinating is because she doesn't subscribe to just one dogma. She's willing to question even dogmas she has subscribed to. And when I did a show with Dr. Tom Cowan, I remember asking her, and I was I was a little surprised she actually said yes, because I wouldn't have been offended if she said no, because because of her expertise and whatnot, I could see why she wouldn't want to maybe be on an episode like that, or even entertain those ideas, but she was willing to, and I think it was a reflection of her character, and we should all be able to do that. And when we did the Flat Earth Union of the Unwanted, when we did the cryptocurrency Union of the Unwanted, the two episodes, the people that were super extremists with their views turned me off a little bit, because it's like, okay, you're like getting all worked up and you're saying that everybody else is wrong and this and that, and same thing with the Bitcoin thing. It's like they were calling every other type of cryptocurrency shit coins, and they're useless. And it's like, well, if one of the reasons we're passionate about Bitcoin is about having control of our own currency and not maybe being less likely that we could be manipulated financially or whatnot, like, does it matter if it's Bitcoin that becomes a savior or some other coin becomes a savior? So it just, to me, dogmas in general can be a little dangerous, and it becomes a turnoff. That's why a lot of the people I have on the show are people who sometimes even go against what I believe, because I try not to subscribe to any one thing. I mean, I am so excited about tomorrow's show with Michael Millerman. I'm glad I'm feeling better, because I was supposed to do this podcast Saturday, and I literally like woke up in the morning, coached a bunch of soccer games, was out in the sun. It was like the hottest day in Massachusetts this season so far. And then I get home and I'm like so beat, and I was like already fighting a little bit of a cold, which I'm still like on the back end of, and I'm like, oh shit, man. I'm like, I'm gonna have to cancel this. And I'm like, I got all these great shows also lined up that I want to feel good for. And so luckily I'm feeling a little better. But Michael Millerman, he is such a fascinating dude. If you guys have not heard him on the Thaddeus Russell podcast, if you guys, and there's something weird about Thaddeus Russell too. I've been thinking about reaching out to him to have him on the podcast again, because he's been doing some amazing work with having Richard Grove on, and James Corbett, and Michael, the Greek philosopher who does ancient Greece revisited, who was just on my podcast again. He's had some amazing guests, but he's I guess he's not doing Renegade History or what is it called, Renegade University anymore, like, and he's really didn't give an explanation on what that was all about or whatever. So I don't know what's going on with that, but he Michael Millerman exposed me to Alexander Dugin, and he's one of the people who really is a big fan of Leo Strauss, and I absolutely love these guys, because they go against everything that I thought I knew and question everything. And those are exactly the type of people I want to surround myself with, people who are going to expand the way I look at the world. And really, like, he'd start tomorrow. I'm going to talk to him about mystics. And we've been saying this for a while about like like how we feel like we're in this spiritual battle. And there's something about his mystics perspective and view and theory, and that kind of links up with like Rupert Sheldrake and his, what was he called, the morphin resistance of philosophy, this idea that all things have consciousness and everything is connected, and that if a mouse learns a trick here, because we're all connected via consciousness or some type of connection, that a mouse somewhere else will learn that trick quicker because we're all connected. And he did a good TED talk about this, and when he was on my podcast years ago, we talked about this. But all these things kind of link in together, because when you look at like Michael Millerman's discussion on mystics, and he goes deep into it in the beginning of the Unregistered podcast when he was a guest on there. And then you look at his his view on mystics, and you start looking at Rupert Sheldrake and the studies and research in regards to like everything being connected, and then you look at like Tom Cowan and how he talked about water having some type of consciousness or some type of, you know, intelligence, right? And it's like, okay, like if you start looking at all these theories and you start putting them together, like they all kind of back each other up in regards to like a worldview. So there's something there, you know, there's something really fascinating about all of it, because it's like one theory seems a little outrageous and crazy, and then you have another really intelligent person who has another theory that kind of backs up that theory, and you're like, okay, maybe this isn't as crazy as we thought it was, and maybe there's something here, and maybe in the near future we'll uncover something that shows that there is some type of consciousness, something, you know, more than the material matter world. And you know, I think a lot of people who consider themselves spiritual or even religious people, maybe it is they're religious and they believe in whatever religion that they end up subscribing to because they've had some type of experience that can't be quantified or understood, which leads them to believe there's something more. And then when a religion comes around and says, hey, yeah, we also believe there's something more, we believe there's something bigger than our, you know, and that's that almost brings it back to flat earth. That's something you see a lot with the flat earthers, is that it is a piece to the puzzle for them that and that uncovers that humans are more than just, I guess, happen chance, right? Like that it was just evolution and it was just luck, that there's something special about us. What do you guys think about that? I mean, do you subscribe to any of that? Greg, Scott, Matt, anybody? This whole idea of humans being, you know, the connection between all these theories and humans just not being just a thing that happened because of accident or the Big Bang or evolution, but there's something more.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is just like the deliberate effort on behalf of, like, you know, people like that Harari guy, World Economic Forum, of really trying to make it very clear that we aren't special, that we aren't unique, and that we are just like, we don't have free will, and that, you know, we're flawed and we need to be upgraded and modified and altered and merged with machines, and that God is just a joke, and that there is no creator, that we are an accident. So if you see that that's what they're driving towards, and that's what they believe, then I'm automatically going to be like, okay, well then I know you're wrong, and like you're trying to push this inverted reality, so the inversion must be true. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that, like, you know, like it's because of that. I firmly believe that there's something. I mean, you know, obviously from like either a creator or something very much larger than all of us going on, and there's a lot of faith involved with that. But like, yeah, we are 100% special. We are very, very unique. And whether or not, you know, I haven't crossed that plane into, you know, completely realizing that we are the center of the universe, or all of that. I actually had a pretty eye-opening, what was it? What would you say? Like a flat earth red pill today. You know, I haven't done my due diligence on that quite yet. I haven't quite crossed into where I fully comprehend or grasp it, but something was pointed. I saw a graphic that kind of really put it into perspective. I was like, wow, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I don't know if I could describe it, but it's basically, if you look at the flat earth map, right, and it's just like, imagine the whole earth laid out in the geography that it is, but then imagine the whole circumference of that flat earth is now the ice wall that they talk about, right, that we can't get out of. And if you look at the flat earth map, if you start at the center of the earth, which would be the North Pole on the flat earth map, and you go out in any direction towards the ice wall, if that map were then wrapped around in a globe pattern, you would be traveling south. So any direction that you travel from that center point, the North Pole, out to the ice wall, you're going to be traveling south. Does that make sense? So really, on paper, on the flat Earth model, you're going to be traveling towards the ice wall from whatever point, but that's going to be south. And I was like, whoa. That's why you can't go to Antarctica, because every time you go south, you're heading towards just the circumference of the circle. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So it just blew my mind. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, need to look some more into that, but that kind of blew my mind. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, you know, it would be less surprising at this point that we are unique and we are this like divine, like petri dish type of thing, and that we are, as opposed to just this infinite spinning ball, spinning all these random things and all the theory of relativity. Just I don't know. That seems preposterous to the point where it's supposed to be so preposterous that I'm not able to comprehend it. Therefore, I can't question it. Right? When the simpler version seems like, I don't know. It seems to be more true to my heart. I guess I don't know, but that's where I'm at with it. Do you guys get what I'm saying with like the ice wall being like geographic south when in fact it's just the circumference of the circle around us? Does that make sense?
It does. And Antarctica has always been one of those. Who's that general? What's his name? That Byrd, right? What's
Byrd? Yeah, Admiral Byrd. Yeah.
That story's always been very weird and unusual when you look at just the fact that there's all this mystery in Antarctica. I mean, it could be anything. It could be because they're testing things. It could be maybe there's something even bigger. We don't know, and it's what was it? The Village, right? That horror movie where
yes,
same idea, right? There's
exactly
village, and they don't realize there's an outside world, and they're tricked into it, and it's like, how do we know that couldn't that couldn't be the case? I just what's funny is that somebody who entertains simulation theory will end up discrediting or dismissing flat earth or any of these other theories. I'm like, well, how is it any crazier? I'm like, simulation theory only makes sense if you're telling me that a toddler has a remote, because that's how crazy the world has gotten. It's like, it's like if everything's a computer game, then some toddler is next to the computer just hitting buttons. It's like, they're like, okay, now it makes sense. We are in a simulation. But Matt, you want to jump in?
No, I just wanted to say goodbye to everybody. I got to run. I just pulled in, and the dog's going to start going nuts any minute now because nobody's home. So I got to get him out and get things situated before the kids get home. So, once again, thanks for doing this, Ricky. Scott, Godspeed, brother.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you, man. Heck yeah. Are you on social media at all? Are you on there?
I am. Yeah, we actually follow each other on Twitter.
Okay, which one are you? Which one are you?
At Vagabond Chef 79. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
okay, perfect.
I'm there. And awesome, Ricky, man. It's been fun. I can't wait to listen to the rest of this when you post it up.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Thanks. I got some great shows. Like I said, Michael Millerman's coming up, and I highly recommend you guys checking out any interview he does. He's super fascinating. I think Ronnie left a comment on I haven't read it yet, but something about Dave Rubin. I got an email about Dave Rubin's coming back on. He was actually, I think, supposed to be on this week, and then we had to reschedule.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's cool. I think he was much less controversial when I had him on last time. It was a long time ago, so it'll be fun to have him back on.
Yeah, so, Ricky, the big question everyone wants to know is when are you going to get Alex on the Union of the Unwanted? Come on.
It's funny.
I've been giving you a hard time about that forever. I'm like, Ricky, if you get Alex on, you don't invite me to that episode of the Union, we're gonna have problems.
No, we definitely need. It's. We obviously we're friends with people who've been on InfoWars and are connected to him. So we've kind of hit, like Charlie and I, Mike not so much, because Mike's, they should call him Modest Mike, because he's just like, he's not pushy, just goes with the flow, which I love. And but Charlie and I have been like kind of pushing some of the other guys who've been on InfoWars, and before we're like, hey, how about we get Alex on? Wouldn't that be pretty cool if we had Alex?
Sean Stone was just in studio with him on like Tuesday or something like that, Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. Monday he was in studio on the Alex Jones show with him.
Dude, Sean Stone loved.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
He it's funny because he was supposed to be on my podcast, and we had to reschedule my podcast. And I'm like, "Are you still making it to the Union Unwanted?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll he's like, "I'm still making it to that." So I'm like, "Okay, well then we'll worry about you coming on my podcast after the Union Unwanted." And he ended up coming on the Union Unwanted, and he hit me up almost immediately saying how much fun he had and how much he really enjoyed it. And it's funny because like I try to get. Sometimes it's just like random, and sometimes it's thought out, but like, so I try to get people together that I think are going to agree and maybe feed off each other, and maybe be able to kind of add stuff to what we might bring up. And then I sometimes bring people on that I think might disagree and might give us a different perspective. And all that happened on the last Union Unwanted, because Mark Malone, I've had him on my podcast. He's been on a Union Unwanted before. similar to myself, he loves philosophy, and Sean very much loves those deeper questions too. And then I was on Generation Z not too long ago, and Dave,
Yeah.
Dave, I think he's been on Union Unwanted a while ago, and I'm like, you know what? He's kind of a deep thinker and whatever. I'm like, he might be, a good addition to this. And then I had, I've had Pasta and on in the Convo Couch hosts on before, so I'm like, you know what? Let me get them on because they're not on too often. And it was perfect because Pasta, we had this deep conversation going, then Pasta kind of gave his perspective, which is good because there are going to be people who are listening who are going to feel like Pasta was feeling. So to
Totally.
be to kind of acknowledge that perspective and have that discussion on air was awesome, instead of just having like a commenter who's like, oh, this is all hippie bullshit. It's like, it's spiritual nonsense. It's like to have somebody like Pasta to be like, hey, you know what, like, oh, this is great, all this internal fixing and soul searching, but there's still bombs being dropped and all. It's like, that's good because that is going to be something people are going to say. So it's nice to get that mixture of perspectives and ideas, and to be and the fact that, I mean, it always ends up happening that nobody gets mad when they question each other or have a different point of view. And I think the closest thing we got to somebody pissing somebody off was maybe Mel K when Greg Palast was on. And that was probably the closest, which probably was my fault for thinking that was going to go well. But it was at least interesting. And it's and then also I remember the first Union Unwanted Steve was on from Slow News Day. He was on with Roger Stone, and I think that he got the impression that he was on some like right wing show, and he was like, he's like, he seemed, because I remember listening to his show the next day, and he's like all of a sudden I'm on a show with Roger Stone. He's like, and I'm like, I get it. He's not a great dude, but he is somebody who has inside knowledge and an
Totally.
inside perspective on what's really going on. So it's like, if we can extract something from that, then to me, I think it's worth having a discussion with them. So it was yeah, but for the most part, everybody gets along, everybody's fun, everybody, I never have to really tell people to like give each other time or whatnot. And it is hard because we have a lot of people on the show that are either host their own shows, so they're used to talking a lot, or they're usually interviewed, so they're used to talking a lot, because you have a guest on, you expect them to kind of fill some time and be able to hold some of the conversation. So to have that many people and yet everybody's cool with just listening, and if somebody's saying something interesting, then that's awesome. But that's one of the cool things about the community, and not just I feel like the listeners, the guests, the hosts, like we are so blessed to have such an awesome community in the alternative media world, at least the bubble that I live in, right? And I feel like it's a pretty big bubble, but it's all the 99% of the listeners that I've interacted with are sometimes I feel like way more interesting than me. Like they're all like well researched, well thought out. They're just awesome people, super nice people. The guests I've had on, for the most part, like 99% of them have been super cool. I've definitely had like one or two that I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to invite them back on, but for the most part, everybody's super cool. Have you had any of those shows yet, Scott?
Oh yeah, definitely. Not too many. Like you said, probably one or two. Like it's just like, you just don't resonate with them. You know what I mean? It's just like, they do great things on their own, but it's just maybe we're just not meant to be. I don't know. But at the same time, I like to think I generally get along with everybody. But yeah, there's a couple of people come to mind, but that's all right. That's all right though.
Yeah, I don't have.
Right.
Can I jump in here?
What's up, Ronnie?
Yeah, because the topic you're talking about. So I had to look up his name, Paul Manafort. He was like Trump's right hand, and I realized listening to him, he was on the
Valuetainment or
yeah, exactly.
like the PB whatever it is. It's I think it's Patrick
B. Davids,
yeah.
podcast. So I listened to him and I realized all the elites they have so big of an ego, because he came on that show and he was like, this is why we are doing what we're doing to Ukraine, and he was like, so when I listened to that, I came home to my girlfriend. I said, now I understand why Rockefeller wrote in his diary or his whatever. If you, he has the thing that if you, I'm like, he said like, I'm not going to bring America. I'm fuck. I'm too drunk for this shit. Jesus fuck. He said he's conspiring against America, and he agrees with that statement. And I feel the same thing with that guy, because he came on that podcast and it was like, you're telling me I'm with Russia, I'm with Ukraine, and he is like going 2 hours explaining why he is going to fuck up everything. I'm like, it's all about ego.
Well,
That's what I've been understanding the last 2 months. But listen to people like in his position, because they're going on Tim Pool's podcast also, those guys, and they're like, I'm doing this because this and this and this, and I'm like, it's all about ego. They're telling you exactly what they're doing. So I'm like, it's so fun.
well, did you
Yeah.
see the Bill Kristol? I mean, the Bill Kristol Scott Horton debate. Bill Kristol is a neocon, but was a part of PNAC. This guy is which should be considered a war criminal, and you know, I think when you look at his influence in regards to getting into Iraq and the Middle East and all the awful things we did there, and this guy was willing to have a debate with Scott Horton, who's like a black belt in regards to like geopolitics, and yet like I'm just like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, how are you going to justify your actions? And he got ripped apart in the debate, and it, to me, again, it was a little bit. I don't know if it was ego, like he lives on this pedestal where he thinks he's the all-knowing, you know, or he's delusional, where he's told this lie so often that he truly believes that there's just reasons and justified reasons to why to go into the Middle East and do the things that the U.S. foreign policy has done throughout the years. And but I think also one thing that I've learned, and I brought up Michael Millerman, who has exposed me to Leo Strauss and some of these other really interesting philosophers like Alexander Dugin, who is what people consider the most dangerous philosopher in the world because he's been banned, and he's also connected to Putin. He's a huge influence in Russia and what goes on there. But he's when I remember looking into Leo Strauss and just doing some research on him because I was fascinated with his work, and I ran into Peter Thiel, obviously the creator of PayPal and investor, and you know, well, he's a lot of things, but
Illuminati.
What's that?
Peter Thiel is in the Illuminati, obviously.
And he did a Hoover Institute interview, which was very fascinating, on Leo Strauss, and he was like, he really knew his shit. He didn't just really know his shit, he was actually very fascinating with his worldviews and his outlook on things and his perspective on the Enlightenment and philosophy and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you know, he talked about something I've talked about on my show about this Leo Strauss view on the Enlightenment, and how prior to the Enlightenment there's a lot of religious wars because of dogmas and all this stuff, and asking these bigger questions. People were debating, you know, just how the world was created, what our purpose is, all these things, all these big questions that cause conflict. And then after the Enlightenment, we thought like, okay, now we're more science based and material based, and we're going to think that nature has no purpose. And what it'll lead to us being in a more peaceful time, because we're not asking those bigger questions that might cause conflict or cause religious wars or whatever. And Leo Strauss looks at it as a bad thing because it will lead us into the materialistic world of postmodernism or modernity or whatever term you want to use, where now all we do is focus on a material world. All we focus on is working to get money, to buy things that make us temporarily happy. And so Leo Strauss has this perspective that the Enlightenment was actually a bad thing. And Peter Thiel is deep into this perspective and describing it and sharing his perspective. And I'm like, because I always like you, Ronnie, and I don't mean like you like I'm drunk. I mean like you as in like just
Well, I am.
So when I go on your show, I'm definitely drinking with you. That way we'll have two of us slurring our words. And so like you, I'm always having this internal debate of like, okay, do the elite, and I say the elite because it's just easier to kind of generalize it that way, but do the elite are what's their motivation? Is it power? Is it money? Is it ideology? Is it just addiction? Right? That's something we can kind of all see, right? There's some that are motivated by addiction to money and power. And Scott, you've had a very personal experience with addiction. I've always made this I've used this example in the past, how a lot of the elite are addicted to money and power, and it's the one addiction we kind of look at differently, right? Like if you had that much addiction to alcohol or sex or porn or prescription drugs, whatever it may be, then it's like we look at it as a issue, like you need to get this resolved, it's ruining your life. But you have the same symptoms, right? The same symptoms as in like you can't get enough of it, you always need to get more to get your fix, you're willing to lie, you're willing to steal, you're willing to do whatever to get more of it. And if that addiction is money or to get ahead, power, whatever it may be, then we don't look down upon it. But yet it's the same symptoms, So it's like that's kind of one thing I thought about. I'm like, okay, so maybe it is just addiction. But then this Peter Thiel interview really made me think like, okay, maybe it's much fucking deeper, because maybe it's not that simple. Maybe it is this worldview where they think that they have this world perspective, and because of their influence, they know and think that they can actually have enough of an influence to mold the world in whatever image they want. And you go back to Hitler, he was very obsessed with the occult stuff, and so I don't know how spiritual he was, but he definitely I'm sure there, if you dig deep enough, you'll find some really fascinating perspectives on things much deeper than just materialistic stuff in regards to Hitler. So maybe all of the elite, good or bad throughout history, have been, it's been more than that. It's been, maybe they think they were chosen. Maybe they think that they're you see it with the ruling class, with monarchies and stuff like that. They do think that they were chosen. They think they're the ones who should be making the decisions. And you look at A Noble Lie, right? Plato's A Noble Lie. I mean, that's what it's about, a noble lie. It's like you're lying, but it's a noble lie because it's for the better of humanity. It's for so a lot of these guys are I think they're not as naive as we think they are sometimes. Like sometimes people are like, oh, how can that be? Because government's stupid, or this is these people are dumb, or that whatever. It's like, maybe they're not, man. Maybe it's much deeper than that. So but I always struggle with all these different perspectives, and I'm sure there's not one answer that you can generalize all of them. Maybe some are motivated by greed, maybe others are motivated by a personal philosophy that they're trying to push upon us all. Who knows? I mean, eugenics was a real thing, right? And I'm sure there's some eugenicists that were absolutely racist and wanted to get rid of some portion of the population, but there might have been some that truly believed that it was for the betterment of humanity and for the future of humanity. Hotep Jesus, who has been in Unit of Unwanted and been on my podcast, he was just on the Rogan podcast recently. He joked around about it, right? Like about how like he doesn't think eugenics is really a bad thing because it's like, for the future of humanity, it kind of makes sense, right? And it's like I can see that argument. I wouldn't force anybody to be sterilized, but I can see the argument being made. So I think even eugenics, there's some people who same thing with masks, vaccines. Even recently, there's some people who are just, I think, assholes, and then there's some people who truly believed that getting everybody vaccinated was in the benefit of humanity. And so, no, Ronnie, you're looking at me like you're.
Mm.
You don't
Yeah.
any
Yeah, I agree. I listen to the podcast with Joe Rogan too, and I'm like, yeah, the problem is when you have the power to do the things. If you don't have the power to do the things, I don't mind you joking around. If you are like the kings and queens that we have and Bill Gates and those guys, when they are talking about killing people, I take it very seriously. So it's a I agree. If you are looking at like like every person, how are we going to continue? Yes, if I wouldn't kill my kid if I got like the doctor told me my kid is going to have this issue or that issue, I wouldn't kill him. But I understand if you had like billions of money and you're just looking at like the best way to go forward for the humanity. Yeah, I get it, but
Well, I wouldn't be so much killed. Like, so some people were just okay with sterilizing. So this idea of like if you had a history of family illnesses, and you had generation of generation of family illnesses, and you genetically were not healthy or had some dysfunctional I don't know, DNA or whatever, and that it would hurt humanity if you kept reproducing, that it would help humanity. I think maybe it was the Swedes that at one point they were trying to get people with like the perfect facial structure to have children. And I don't know if there's some type of incentive to do it, or if they sterilized people who didn't have this like perfect bone structure. But they were saying how that's explains why there's so many attractive people in Sweden. Like the majority of them have
the biggest problem with that theory is because I have a cousin that his first kid got very sick and died, and then he has 4 kids at the moment, and last time I talked with him, he had like 6 or 7, like his wife has like, what is called when the baby comes out, when
miscarriages.
Yeah. So they tried like what it counts up to like 15 times to get children, and now they have 5 and they're all healthy and they're fine. So the problem is they tried so many times and they got 5 healthy children's. So are you going to kill them because they birthed someone that did not survive? So that's why I like eugenics is like, it's not my
Well,
thing.
my wife is a perfect example of it, because her aunts, her uncles, her mom, her mom who passed away some years ago of cancer, her aunt who just passed away of cancer, her dad, like everybody in her family has like some horrific health issue, and knock on wood, she has none. But if we lived in a world where we accepted eugenics as our worldview, she should not be having kids. But it's obviously that's not something that was a factor in regards to me wanting to start a family with her. Like I wasn't like, oh well, yeah, I'm worried. And it's also because I have this philosophy on hereditary issues. I'm convinced that there's a lot more things that are contribute to lifestyle than there is hereditary, right? Or even if there are some hereditary issues, then maybe you can suppress some of those issues by changing your lifestyle. And so I'll explain this real quickly. I do have to go soon, so I want you guys to plug whatever you guys want to plug or ask anything you want to ask. But I'll give you this theory real quick because I don't recall if I've talked about this on the podcast before. But I'm convinced that the same way you see fat kids because you have fat parents, and it's not hereditary, right? Like sometimes, like some of it can be hereditary, but you can't dismiss the fact that a child is eating the same way that the parents are eating, which that means if that what they're eating made the parents fat, that means that the kids are adopting their lifestyle, so they're going to be more likely to be fat. But you could easily just say, oh, it's hereditary. Like my parents are fat, that's why I'm fat. Well, it's like, okay, well, somebody had to start being fat, right? And then so to me, I look at like a lot of diseases, not just obesity, but a lot of diseases that way. It's like, okay, well, your dad drank a lot and he had liver failure, and it's like, okay, then your grandfather also had liver failure, and then it's like, okay, oh, look, it's in my blood. Or maybe everybody in your family drank a lot and they all had liver failure for the same reason. So it's like, to me, it's one of those things where I feel like too often modern medicine will just say, oh, it's hereditary, it's because it's in your blood, it's because it's in your DNA, it's because it's in your family. And it's like, well, if they're family, isn't there a chance that they're exposed to similar things or living similar lifestyles, and that could be a contributor? So maybe you can break that cycle by living healthier. So like my wife, her mother, grew up waitressing and bartending, and she was always managing bars and working at a restaurant. So she was constantly living that that type of lifestyle where she was out late, she was drinking after her shift. She grew up in an era where she smoked. My wife's aunt, same thing. So like all these people who have similar health issues also had similar lifestyles, so to me, it's like, okay, well, my wife doesn't smoke. She doesn't live that type of lifestyle. Could some of it be hereditary and she should be concerned? Maybe. But I also think that if she lives healthier than her family that had health issues, then maybe that will decrease the chances of her having those issues. So it's like, to me, it's like the typical problem with modern medicine. They don't ask you enough questions. So they don't, they just say, oh, if your parents died of this and your grandparents died of that, they don't ask like, okay, what do they do that could have been a contributor that maybe you're not doing? They just say, oh, it's in your family bloodline, you're going to have the same issue, let's test you for this, this thing or that thing or whatever. So does that make sense what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to find a way to kind of explain what I'm saying. Greg, does that make sense?
It actually it does. Some of it I think is a little bit hereditary, but I think the majority of it comes from how you're brought up. I coached soccer like you did, and it was always rep level. And you see that I can remember one kid who was just a phenomenal player. And the first time she ever came to a tryout, one of the kids said, oh, she's going to be a little late, she missed the bus. And so I got asking questions, and this kid came from an absolutely horrendous background. But the kid hated it so much that she would not subscribe to anything that family did and went and lived her own life. And she's a completely different kid than what the rest of the family is. She was, all her siblings were fat, her parents were fat. She was as skinny as a rail from playing soccer and a lot of it. She didn't do any of the drinking or any of that. And you would not ever suspect that kid came from that family because of the upbringing. She just didn't subscribe to any of that stuff. So I more towards how is somebody brought up and where do they live, and like you say, I mean, the health issues, if the parents are fat, the kids are going to be fat because they're eating the same stuff. Yeah.
Sports is actually, that's something I've not thought about, Greg, and that's actually a really good I guess another example to use to kind of, I guess, defend what I'm trying to say, because when you look at athletes, for example, people will say, oh, he's a great athlete because his dad was a good athlete. And it's like, so they but when they say it, it's almost like it's DNA, it's in their genes. But the truth is they might be a good athlete because of their dad, but not because it's DNA. It's because their dad loves sports, so he played sports with him, right? So and it's like it was environmental. It was because of the way he was raised, not because it was already in his DNA and he was born that way. It was because he worked for it and he had a present father or parent who loved sports that kind of teach him what he knew and all this stuff. Because if it's like, if that was true, if you were just born to play a sport, then you should have like zero outside influence and you should be able to just do it and become this amazing. It's like, no, like when you meet people who are good at something, they had some type of mentor or somebody who was passionate about that sport that pushed them in that direction, or at least just a parent that cared enough to help with their progress, something like that. So yeah, I mean, I think, and again, it's not to say that there aren't some hereditary issues. I'm sure there are, but I just think that we typically dismiss the fact that we have any control over our own fate, right? And that's the part that I'm kind of trying to highlight, that we do have control of our health. We do have at least more control than sometimes we're being told. This idea of like, oh, well, if everybody in your family is dying of this, then you're likely to die of that too. It's like, well, when you're told that by a doctor, you start thinking to yourself like, oh shit, like I can't control this. This is out of my hands. All I can do is sit back and hope that, that they're wrong. Where, what we should be saying is like, okay, like it might be hereditary, but it also might be lifestyle. So live healthier. And then, your parents or your siblings or whoever was having these health issues and take your health into your own hands, instead of, I used to bust my parents' balls all the time. Like, they used to pray for health, right? And I'm like, okay, I get it, you pray for health. I'm like, but if you pray for health and you don't exercise, you don't eat good, I'm like, I'm not your prayers are going to work. I'm like, they're going to work much better if you're being proactive and you're actually taking it in your own hands. So it's kind of the same type of thing. It's like I don't want people to feel like they have no control. You do have control. There's things you don't, and there's things you do have control. Like cancer, obviously a very hot topic in regards to, forever. It's been a hot topic about like, is it hereditary? Can we control it? Is there things we can do? What causes it? All these things. And it's like, to me, it's like, okay, if you have a history of cancer in your family, you can either just sit back and cross your fingers, or you can say, you know what, I don't know what fucking causes cancer or where my family members got cancer or what caused it, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I am healthy as hell. And so if I do end up getting it, I am, my immune system and my body is ready to fight it, the best it can, or I'm just going to make sure I'm so healthy that, I don't get it. So to me, it's like, it's very important to take your health in your own hands. That's why I love health related shows. Rob Wolf, who was on my show not too long ago, he's actually going to be a sponsor. He asked me if I wanted to have Element as a sponsor for the podcast, which I love. I mean, I have some electrolytes in here right now. So I think hydration is something that, how many people are dealing with migraines? My wife, when I met her, dealing with migraines all the time, and I'm like, you're not hydrating. Oh, I drink plenty of water. I'm like, I don't think you drink enough water. And especially in the hot summer, or you're working, you're doing stuff, you're not even thinking about hydrating. And then by the time you realize that you're dehydrated and you have a headache, it takes a lot of effort and time to hydrate yourself. So it's even something like electrolytes, something that can fix the issue. But either way, my point is, like, you can take your health in your own hands and you can do something about it, and at least just increase the chances of maybe preventing some future issues. Because I do think that, like, every life decision can slowly get you to being sick, and it's not overnight. It's little things, and it's like taking shortcuts here by eating crappy food, or skipping the gym, or even dealing with stress, right? Like stress itself, to me, stress is huge. I physically, even like my gut, I I don't feel right when I'm super stressed. Like I feel nauseous all the time. I have headaches. I feel fatigued, and it's just from, stress of work, or maybe money or bills. It's like, oh fuck, how are we going to pay the bills? And then once that stress is gone, physically I feel 100% better. I feel like, oh my god, I don't feel nauseous anymore. My sleep is better. I have more energy. So it's like, that's another aspect of it, right? Were you raised in a family that didn't handle stress well? You fought a lot, but nobody taught you how to find peace and deal with things and not stress about the little things. Maybe you raised in a family, you guys were always fighting. I mean, years and years of being in that stressful environment of fighting and arguing, or a dysfunctional family, can obviously have a huge effect on your health in the long run. So that's another part that's environmental.
Well, I'll say I always said there's 3 S's. 2 of them you got to stay away from, and 1 you got to do. Stress, sugar, you stay away from them and get some sleep.
You're right.
You get enough sleep. You get enough sleep, and the whole world looks a whole lot different when you wake up. If you're stressed and tired, the world looks completely different.
Absolutely. Hey, Ronnie, you want to let people know when they'll be able to find your podcast? Hopefully in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's Enlighten Me. It's about, yeah. And it will come out when Rick is ready, after my birth of my next child.
And so that's 7 days roughly.
Yeah, 7 days plus or less.
Awesome. So
yeah.
Sometime in June you can find Enlighten Me About. I know you already have a YouTube channel, so make sure people subscribe to it, find it, and then I'm sure you'll be posting it there, or at least have links.
Get it, Ronnie. Get it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, man. Like, you've been a big follower, supporter for this whole time, man. I appreciate you a lot, man.
Yeah, and Scott, I will have you on too,
yes,
if you like.
I would love to, man.
We'll
definitely do
discuss this and how to get rid of it.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that for sure.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So yeah,
thank you.
Peace out, and have a good night.
Later, brother.
All right, thanks for joining us. Thanks for staying up late. Greg?
Yeah, Ricky, I got a dib too, man. I got to go deliver a table. So there you go.
Yeah. I got to go too. My family have dinner. But Greg,
cool.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks. So hopefully we do
chat with you, Greg,
in the near future, and keep.
You too. Good luck with the business, Scott.
Heck yeah, you too, brother. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, it's how crazy is that, right? You do one little thing like that and changes your whole universe upside down.
Dude, I'm just like I was saying, I'm making a Facebook page, like I'm doing a whole thing. It's gonna be called Nash Tasks, like Nashville Tasks, just random tasks around town. Let me know. Nash Tasks, baby. I'm gonna do a YouTube channel too. Make it fun. It's great.
Why not?
It's gonna be fun, man. Yeah.
It's a super catchy name, so it's gonna and there's people who don't know how to do like a lot of typical shit, or at least just don't have the time to do it, and they'd rather just pay somebody else to do it.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Around here, I guess that's the one thing I like. It's so like expensive down here. There's like a lot of rich people around here, like, so I'm just gonna take advantage of it, man.
Awesome.
Crazy.
And keep podcasting.
Thank you so much, dude. Ricky, thank you so much for having me on, man. I love you, brother, so much. So appreciate you, dude.
I'm so happy for you, man. You deserve all the success in the world. I'm so glad that this risk taking of yours is paying off and just moving, and it's not, that's not easy, man. And people heard our Swapcast, they know the shit that you've been through. You've been through some crazy life experiences, so it's good that that karma's coming back and giving you some good in your life, and giving back, because you obviously are a great soul, and you've been super supportive. You talked about Ronnie. You've been super supportive too with everybody that you've linked up to. You were always supporting them, saying nothing but kind words, and we all appreciate that a lot. So we're all happy to see you do well, man. It means a lot.
Cool, awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Later, Greg. Talk to you later, brother. Peace, guys.
Yep. Take care.
See ya, Greg.
Bye.
Have a great night, Greg, and thank you again. We'll reconnect soon in the near future.
Yep, next time. Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks. Take care.